All right, let's call this meeting to open. And first step, let's do our quorum check and roll call. So Eloise, thank you.
District 1, Supervisor Alejo.
Here.
District 2, Supervisor Phillips. District 3, Supervisor Lopez.
Priscilla for Supervisor Lopez.
District 4, Supervisor Askew.
Present, and Yuri Anderson will be stepping in for me at 11 o'clock.
Thank you. District 5, Supervisor Adams.
Here.
City of Carmel by the Sea.
Yeah.
City of Delray Oaks.
Here.
City of Gonzales.
Here.
City of Greenfield.
Here.
City of King City.
Present.
City of Marina. City of Monterey.
Here.
City of Pacific Grove.
Here.
City of Salinas.
Here.
City of Sand City. City of Seaside.
Here.
City of Soledad. Ambag.
Here.
Caltrans District 5.
Here.
Monterey Bay Air Resource District.
Here.
Monterey Regional Airport District.
Here.
Monterey Salinas Transit.
Here.
City of Watsonville. CSUMB.
Here.
Chair, we do have a quorum.
Okay, that's great. Eloise, do you have a flag you can display for our pledge?
Yeah, we do. Michael took care of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael. If I could ask Tim Gubens from Caltrans, would you lead us in a pledge, please?
All right, thank you. Let's begin. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tim, and good morning to everybody. We're going to kick it right off to public comments. I'm not sure if we have any public members that have joined us today, but if so, or if we have any communications from the public, under this item, each member of the public is allowed 3 minutes to address concerns, comments in items or on items on this agenda may be given when that agenda item is discussed, and persons who wish to address the board for public comments or on any item on the agenda are encouraged to submit comments in writing to Maria and the website of maria@tamcmonterey.org by 5 p.m. the preceding Monday. So any comments should be reflective of the district's responsibility in TAMC's area of responsibility. So Eloise, help me out. Do we have any members of the public have joined us?
I don't see any, but if anybody would like to speak up.
I'm not seeing any hands or faces. And do we have any members who have communicated with us via email or phone calls?
That's a negative, Chair.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So Todd, I'll turn it over to you for item number 3.
All right. Item number 3 is consent agenda. Would you like to?
So on my agenda, I'm looking at 3 is present transportation agency employee. Maybe I'm looking at the one that's dated for Monday.
I think there was a previous version that had accidentally left the consent agenda off, and also the executive director's report later on. So we had republished the new one since Monday, just updated it. So item number 3 is consent agenda.
Okay, and my apologies to the rest of the board. Let me get this one open. So you're right. Let me operate on the current one. Item 3 is the consent agenda. Any members of the board or public wishing to pull any items from the consent agenda, now would be the time to do so, or comments. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised. I do want to note one item on the consent that you'll be approving today. It is 3.1.7. I think the Executive Director, Todd Muck, has already addressed this to the full board as well as the Executive Committee in reference to retitling and a minor reorganization as a first step with the Deputy Executive Director position. So with that, I will entertain a motion to approve of the consent agenda.
So
Move to second.
I'm sorry, who was the motion by?
Potter,
Okay, Dave Potter motion, and second was Supervisor
Adams.
Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, Eloise, roll call, please.
District 1, Supervisor Alejo. District 2, Supervisor Phillips.
Aye.
District 3, Alternate Barba.
Aye.
District 4, Supervisor Askew.
Aye.
District 5, Supervisor Adams.
Aye.
City of Carmel by the Sea.
Aye.
City of Del Rey Oaks.
Aye.
City of Gonzales.
Aye.
City of Greenfield.
Aye.
City of King City.
Aye.
City of Marina.
Aye.
City of Monterey.
Aye.
City of Pacific Grove.
Aye.
City of Salinas.
Aye.
City of Sand City. City of Seaside.
Aye.
City of Soledad.
Aye.
Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Todd, we'll turn it over to you for next item, Employee of the Quarter.
Thank you. So this is Employee of the Quarter for July 1st through September 30th of 2021. And employees of the quarter are selected by their colleagues by a vote. So I'm happy to announce Lori Williamson was selected by our colleagues to be this quarter's Employee of the Quarter. She was recognized for her professionalism, her positive attitude, and hard work overseeing construction of the Salinas Rail Extension Kickstart Project Package 1. They also appreciate her management of the Freeway Service Patrol and the Safe Call Box programs, and our work on the Regional Wayfinding Program sign project in the US 101 South of Salinas project. So for those reasons, her colleagues selected her as the Employee of the Quarter. Congratulations, Lori.
Thank you. I'd like to thank my coworkers for being voted, excuse me, Employee of the Quarter, and to say that I am thankful for working with such a great group of positive people that are focused on making our community a better place to live and work. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Lori, and we appreciate all you do. And there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes that the board never gets to see, but we see the outcomes, and we appreciate all your hard work. All right, Todd, I think we're going to go to item number 5, I believe it is. Receive the presentation of the Monterey Salinas Transit Draft Comprehensive Operational Analysis.
And Christina Watson will be kicking off that presentation.
Actually, we're on item
Okay, sorry.
we're on the legislative item, not the Monterey Transit item.
I'm sorry. That's right. I was looking at the item 5 is an update on the state and legislative issues and recommending approval of our draft 2022 legislative program for distribution to committees, which Christina will be kicking off the presentation.
Yes, good morning. Mr. Chair and board members, Christina Watson, Principal Transportation Planner. Actually now Deputy Director of Planning, right? So thank you for that. So this morning, I'm going to start by talking about the draft 2022 legislative program, which will help guide staff and consultant reactions and interactions with our legislators in Washington and in Sacramento. And after we've gone through the draft program, which I will be sharing my screen to go through with you right now, then we'll be asking our consultants, Gus Curry and Paul Schlesinger, to talk about what's happening right now or what's recently happened at the state and federal levels. Let me see here. Okay. Are you able to see the draft 2022 legislative program?
Yeah,
okay.
We can see it.
Fantastic. Okay, great. So the process for how we approve this program is that it first went to the executive committee this month in October to talk through some of the ideas and updates to what the board adopted for the 2021 program, and make some updates for the 2022, what we're anticipating will be priorities. And the next step after this board reviews and discusses this today would be for you to consider approving to distribute it to the other committees, which are the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee, the Technical Advisory Committee, the Rail Policy Committee, for input and feedback on the draft program. And then we'll bring it back to exec in January for further discussion and for recommendation of a final adoption at the January board meeting. So that's the process. And then the priorities are real similar to what was adopted in the 2021 program. Items 1S and 2S are focused on funding for projects, whether maximizing the funding or pursuing and seeking the funding for our priority projects. Item 3S is promoting a jobs housing balance and alternative transportation modes. Item 4S is supporting electric vehicle charging infrastructure funding. 5S is exploring a replacement funding mechanism for the gas tax, which has had very diminished returns in terms of transportation investments since the last time the gas tax was increased. And 6S, supporting funding to increase broadband infrastructure capacity. And I think Gus is going to talk about this a little bit in his discussion later, because there was some action taken on this, but the executive committee felt it was important to keep this in the priority list. Item 7S is supporting the use of state rail funding to implement new coast rail service. 8S is supporting efforts to reauthorize public-private partnership authority, public tolling authority, and design build authority. These are modes that we coordinate with Caltrans on to accelerate project delivery. 9S is supporting the Vision Zero reduction of fatalities on our roadways. And then moving on to the next page, still on the state program. I'll pause when I get to the end of the state program so you can give me feedback on this before I move on to the federal program. 10S is supporting funding for the active transportation program that is routinely oversubscribed and underfunded. 11S is supporting streamlining of project delivery. This includes simplifying grant applications. And 12S is coordinating with Monterey Salinas Transit to update the Transportation Development Act, or TDA law. And 13S is another MST item, supporting MST efforts to fund the mandated zero emission bus fleet by 2040. And 14S is supporting transit-oriented development, complete streets, alternative commutes, multimodal transportation. And then finally, 15S is modernizing the Brown Act. So this is the bill that AB 361 that Assemblymember Rivas authored. This is basically seeking some modifications to that to simplify our ability to have remote meetings and increase public participation. And then 16S is sort of our, we coordinate with each other. So we're working with MST, Monterey County, and the city of Salinas on developing these priorities. I'd like to pause there, take a breath, and see if anyone has any questions or comments on the state program.
Christina, I don't see any hands raised, so I think.
I see 2 hands raised, Mr. Chair.
Okay, there they are. Supervisor Alejo, go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing I would say that was needed, along with the electric vehicles, there's efforts to also provide tax credits for electric bikes. And I know Congressmember Panetta is a co-author of that legislation. But those would be certainly, I think, big incentives to get more people to use the e-bikes. So maybe that perhaps could be added. On the area of broadband, the hard work is ahead of us, right? We got the money, but now it's the implementation. And so through CSAC, I proposed that on the Middle Mile Advisory Council that was formed by legislation in June in the trailer bill, that we also, the local government should pursue a seat on the advisory council for the implementation of that major infrastructure project statewide. There currently is only 4 state legislators and 5 representatives of different 5 state agencies, but there's no local governments to help guide the discussion at when the implementation is being decided. So that would be one for us to perhaps advocate for, just to have local government perspectives. I think that was it.
Okay, great. Christina, do you need anything else from the comments that you're proposing to add? Question on 4S. There may be some terminology that Gus can provide. Adding e-bikes, is there some term there that would be the appropriate phrase?
Yeah, I can work on wordsmithing this after the meeting.
Okay, great. I see hand raised, Supervisor Askew. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for working on this and bringing this forward, Christina. A couple things. Thank you, Supervisor Alejo, for drawing attention to the e-bike infrastructure investments. I think that the feds are putting some funding towards that. We just got our first grant program in place with the Air District Board. I'd love to see that added into, I think it would be like 4S maybe, or maybe under active transportation. There was another item. And then under 4S with the electric vehicle, but I think it's just sort of a broader, like, how do we fund transition of the fleet in general for agencies as well as members of the public. So maybe just expanding on the vision that's the scope of what we're talking about there. I was gonna, safe routes to school, is that included in like 14S or 10S? Does that fit under one of those?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I can work with our lead to figure out the right language to use for the safe routes to school and where the right place would be for that.
Okay, yeah, and if it's already embedded into one of these, we don't need to call it out, but I do feel like the planning work that we've been able to do through Safe Routes to School has been instrumental in helping us sort of raise awareness about active transportation and help the community be a part of envisioning a different kind of local, ability to get around. I wanted to call out 15S. And for me, I think that's a big one, especially with an agency like ours, where we have people from, such a wide geographic region, beyond COVID. And I don't know that if we need to be explicit that, that the opportunity to have public involvement and to allow everyone to participate in our meetings, even beyond, a global pandemic, that this really is sort of the direction that we want to go into the future. And then I don't know if this fits under 3S, but there's a lot of focus on housing, and with the new RENA numbers coming out, the commitment that all of our local jurisdictions are going to have to get additional units built in the coming years. And I think I don't know exactly what the priority for us is, but I do want to recognize that where those units are built will have a tremendous impact on our local transportation systems. And if there are priorities that we have around the investments in housing or how that interconnects to transit, I think that this would be the right time for us to get really clear about what our priorities are and have that included in our platform. So thank you for the work on this, and look forward to hearing more feedback from the committees. And I'm assuming if there's other feedback that we have, we can just send it directly to you. Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, Supervisor Adams.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the great work, Christina. I just was wondering whether or not we needed to add to the priorities that we will continue to participate in legislative advocacy days, both at the state and at the federal level. I don't know if that's embedded someplace or if we need to call it out, and specifically both on our own and also with the Central Coast Coalition. Is that something we need to add specifically, or is it simply?
I think that's more of a work program item
Okay.
rather than a legislative priority.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah, and that's, excuse me for interrupting, that's something that we do incorporate in our work program and our budget, and making sure we have budget for the continued Federal Legislative Advocacy Day would be something that we'll talk about in our upcoming budget discussions.
Okay, that sounds terrific. I think all of my other things are really more project related than just, thinking about prioritization and just specific projects that we want to think about. So my expectation is after we receive after the subcommittees or different committees to have an opportunity to look at everything and it comes back for final approval, is that the point at which we will start to prioritize what the major focus should be? Or is that a
Typically,
step that
we
go
haven't
through?
really prioritized within the list, but we can do that at the January exec if that's the direction of the board.
Okay, we can take a look at it and see.
Yes.
Everything's a priority.
Well, all right.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks
if I
very
could,
much.
Supervisor Adams, if I could make a follow-up comment on that. I think if we look at this in terms of our priorities as we look at opportunities with the state, we do want to be careful in how we state what our priority is so that it's broad enough to jump in on opportunities. And maybe Gus can address that when we hear from him. But also we want to make sure that we have the language here broad enough that we are able to go out to state funding and opportunities. And I don't know how we would prioritize 1 through 15 because they're all basically one. We're listing them 1 through 15 to just keep track of them. But when we have an opportunity, we jump forward. But these are all really our priorities, and I don't know that there's a way to say that they're 1 through 15. This is just a matrix of everything that we're paying attention to as we have opportunities at the state to get funding and to move things from the priorities to work plan. I'm seeing a hand raised. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, I just wanted to add what this list does without ranking priorities is it provides staff direction on what the board's focus is and gives us authority to go ahead and write letters of support and take actions to support these priorities without necessarily having to bring it back to the board for approval. And if we come across something else that is not clearly stated in these priorities, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion and authority to advocate for them. But these give us those clear guidelines of what to advocate for as we move into the upcoming year.
Yeah, well said. Supervisor Lejo, I see your hand raised. You
Yeah,
have
there was the one item I did forgot to mention was, and perhaps it's early for this conversation, but I just wanted to flag it. And it's a result of that demonstration project that the Regional Transportation Commission in Santa Cruz County, the RTC, had the last 2 weekends of a new type of mostly battery, but also hydrogen light rail. It was pretty amazing technology, all manufactured in California. It's quiet, it's completely green, and it's cheaper than your traditional light rail infrastructure. So it seems like that, knowing that the RTC is exploring that new technology, that perhaps we should at least at some point, have a conversation as that may be something that may be able to connect light rail between both Santa Cruz and Monterey counties. I was, if any of the members did not attend that, I mean, it was really worth writing on and seeing how it works. I even got calls from Mayor Ignacio Velasquez in Hollister, because they have so much traffic on the 25 from Hollister to Gilroy that it might provide even a light rail connection between those two communities as well. So I just wanted to flag it. If it's too early to be part of a legislative program, perhaps just as a priority that we may want to explore further with Santa Cruz County. Thank you.
Yeah, I think those are great comments. And Christina, maybe you and Gus could talk about offline, and maybe it's an adjustment to number 7S. So you can look at this and see if there's a place that we could be having an addition there if it's appropriate. Okay, any other comments? Any other comments on the screen share, the 15 priorities we have from board members?
I don't see any other hands raised, so I can move on to the federal program if you like.
Go ahead, Christina.
Okay. So our draft 2022 legislative program for federal priorities has a lot of focus on funding. Of course, a lot of things could change if and when the federal government adopts transportation authorization bill, which Mr. Schlesinger is on the line to talk about in a moment. But this is assuming that nothing does happen,
Christina,
basically.
I think we've lost you.
This is based on the current status. We are supporting an adequate level of funding for Monterey Salinas Transit, increasing and indexing the gas tax to inflation and or exploring innovative funding mechanisms to the gas tax, expanding access to the Transportation Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, or TIFIA loans, removing procedural obstacles. This is again about streamlining for federally funded projects. 6 is a new item supporting congressionally directed federal funding for agency transportation priorities. This is something that has been a recent discussion this year in Washington, D.C. Item 7 is coordinating with military installations in Monterey County to help fund transportation projects that have a nexus to those installations. Item 8 is supporting MST's application for federal funding for the SURF Busway project on the Monterey Branch Line corridor. 9 is supporting applications for the rebranded Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity Transportation Discretionary Grant Program. This was previously called the BUILD program, and prior to that it was the Tiger program. And the Central Coast, the entire Central Coast has only gotten one grant through all the years of those programs, and it was for a bus project. So we're hoping that the Central Coast can have more success in the future on that program. And then 10 is supporting funding for resilient transportation infrastructure projects. And then we have, after that, the 2F is allowing CEQA, which is a stronger environmental law, to substitute for NEPA for transportation projects. 3F is advocating, this is related to broadband and internet access on the federal level. 4F is supporting streamlining of federal rail funding. The intercity rail and the commuter rail programs are administered by 2 different bodies at the federal level, and the funding is separated. 5SF is supporting Amtrak funding, and then 6F is the same as the last item on the state, which is supporting our partner agencies in their federal priorities. And that's all I have for federal. If there's any questions.
Any board member questions or comments on the federal side of the priorities?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Greg.
On the federal level, we're changing everything around, so there's going to be a lot more electric vehicles that are going to be coming down the road. And if MST by 2040 wants to be zero for environmental reasons, they don't want to have any kind of level of toxicity coming out of the trucks or their buses. How are we going to have? Is the federal government going to help support different spots where we can have these electric cars so we can actually have them hook up? I mean, we have to do a plan here because right now there is this, all these vehicles, thousands of vehicles. Hertz wants to buy all these electric Teslas. And we're going to get inundated with electric cars and buses and everything else. Where are we going to plug in for all this stuff? And is there funding for this? That's my question. Thank you.
Christina, I'm sure you have that answer.
Actually, our executive director has his hand raised.
Okay, go ahead, Todd.
Well, I just wanted to mention that we are participating with the other Central Coast counties in the Central Coast Coalition in an electric vehicle charging infrastructure study for the Central Coast counties. And that's one of several efforts to looking at how to identify vehicle charging opportunities. We're also working with that group and specifically with AMBAG for freight applications where freight vehicles can charge. And I know Monterey Salinas Transit, as they're looking to convert their fleets to electric or zero emission vehicles, they're considering ways to charge their fleet at the same time.
Great, thank you.
And we do have an item about electric vehicle charging on the state, but I realize as you said that we don't on the federal. So we can definitely add that as an item under the federal program as well. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And I think it will fit in several places there. I see a hand, Mayor LeVar.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify too, so MST's push for 100% electric vehicles is also in response to meet state and federal guidelines regarding that. And they also advocate for additional funding, both at the state and federal level for electrification infrastructure and funding of these vehicles when they're used for public entities. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mayor. Christina, back to you. Anything additional on this for federal before we
just seeking the board action after the rest of our reports to approve it for circulation to committees.
Okay.
So I will stop sharing and hand it over to Gus to present the state legislative report.
Okay, go ahead, Gus. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Christina. Gus Corey, legislative advocate. Hope that everybody's in good health. Just to maybe touch upon some of the questions real quick before I give the year-end summary that came up on the platform. So with respect to e-bikes, there's actually some money set aside available through the California Air Resources Board. It's not that much. It's only $10 million. And so not sure how much the incentives will be, but that was provided through the passage of SB 129. So hopefully we can advocate, happy to advocate before the Air Resources Board to try to prioritize maybe incentives coming over to our neck of the woods, and particularly trying to get folks that live in disadvantaged communities to be able to have access to those incentives. With respect to zero emission vehicle infrastructure, there is also about $500 million that the legislature adopted for zero emission vehicle rebates. And so that's another program that the Air Resources Board manages. And so that's why we wanted to kind of leave that item in the platform. Is as Supervisor Alejo was alluding to with broadband, it's similar to zero emission vehicle infrastructure. We want to make sure that now that there's actual funding available, that we are beneficiaries of that funding. And then I think Supervisor Agnew had a question about the Safe Routes to School program. That program was actually folded into the active transportation program. There was an amalgamation of different bike and pedestrian programs that had existed up until about 7 or 8 years ago. And those programs got folded into the ATP program, which the county has done a phenomenal job of receiving awards from over the last, over the various cycles. There's been 5 cycles thus far. And then just to underscore comments made by Director Muck, yeah, this document, after it receives your blessing, is really critical in helping me as an extension of your staff and the board to help advocate not just with our delegation, but with other key stakeholders to make sure that we're getting our priorities addressed. The legislative cycle does not sync up with our board meetings. And so we try to craft this document in a way that's flexible so that we can be expeditious in our reaction to things that are either injurious to our interests or to capitalize in support, so that I can actually work with other lobbyists, other stakeholders in forwarding our interests. And so I did want to remind the board, Mr. Chair, it's something that you should be congratulated on, is we were pretty innovative in over the last two state legislative platforms. We advocated for zero emission vehicle infrastructure before most other transportation entities did. And that was not lost upon the governor's office. And then also having the item in on broadband. And I know that Supervisor Alejo did a lot of work in that space this year. That's hopefully going to pay off some dividends as we look at creative solutions to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and providing more, congestion management tools, if you will, that are sort of unconventional. So just wanted to point that out. As far as a state legislative summary, so the legislature has adjourned for the year. They adjourned the first year of the 2-year session on September 10th. Governor Newsom had until October 10th to sign or veto legislation. The bills are referenced in the packet. I won't go through that unless folks have questions or comments about them. But what's going on now is there was not a deal on a transportation package, and it was really hinged upon authorizing the governor to exhaust the remaining appropriation authority for the High-Speed Rail Bond Act, which there's still $4.2 billion that the governor wanted to spend. In exchange, what Governor Newsom was offering was basically about $3.4 billion worth of general fund revenue, $500 million of that was to supplement the active transportation program. The CTC took action in March to fund about $450 million worth of projects, but they received over $2.2 billion worth of requests. And so the governor was trying to make a good faith effort to try to work down the Cycle 5 list. In addition, there was about $2.5 billion that he was offering for the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program. That's a program that King City's benefited from. We have other priorities along the coast that we're trying to fund to really have connectivity between the Bay Area and the Los Angeles Basin. So that money was kind of held in escrow. And then there was $400 million in state and local climate adaptation funds. This is a new program the legislature had put together. And the purpose is to try to address climate resiliency along the state highway system. And we're sort of ground zero with the prevalence of, fires, mudslides, and the like. And so we would be a natural beneficiary. And so the plan is for the legislature to come back in January. They reconvene on January 3rd and to strike a deal on how to utilize the remainder of these funds. The governor's office and others don't really want this to spill over into the fiscal year 22-23 conversations, where the governor has to introduce, per the Constitution, the FY 22-23 budget by January 10th. Yet there is some discussion about further augmenting the funds that are currently on the table. So we'll have to wait and see. And the last thing that I'll mention, Supervisor Alejo had mentioned the conversations revolving hydrogen. That's a real-time conversation that's going on right now. One of the sticking points as to why the legislature did not reach a deal on the transportation package is it was in the press about Los Angeles just wanting more rail funding for commuter rail service down there. But there's also a difference of opinion as far as the fuel source for passenger rail. So high-speed rail is dependent upon electrification in order to reach the speeds that were promised in the Bond Act, being able basically to get from San Francisco to LA in 2.5 hours. But Assemblymember Laura Friedman, who's chair of the Assembly Transportation Committee, and she's sort of been point person appointed by Speaker Rendon to negotiate on the budget deal, along with Speaker Rendon, wrote a letter saying that we should look at alternative fuel sources such as hydrogen. And there are other commuter and intercity rail passenger entities in the state that are looking at hydrogen as a carbon neutral fuel source, if you will. But the technology is still in its embryonic stage. It would work perhaps for commuter rail, would not necessarily work for high-speed rail, because bad things would happen if you ran hydrogen on a 200-mile-per-hour train. But nevertheless, these are fluid conversations, and I will work with Christina to amend the platform to tweak it in order to acknowledge that development. So I'll stop right there, Mr. Chair, and I'll see if you or other directors have any questions or comments. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thanks, Gus. Mayor LaBarre, I see your hand is raised. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Gus, when you mentioned the CARB 10 million for e-bikes, and a way I would suggest advocating is so we have a local entity, our resource district, thank you, Askew, for bringing this forward, that put the incentive in place. So if there's a local incentive in place, they should prioritize those dollars for the local ones, and to make sure they're always stackable with any local or state or federal available incentives. I think that would be important, especially given the increase in the cost of the bikes. You know, as we're seeing costs go up, maximizing that would be great. This would be a great time for that. Thank you.
Of course.
Okay, next up, I see Councilmember Chaps. Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Corey, thanks for the updates. I'm looking at where you are. Okay. So just a quick question. Are you our kind of like point of contact for, it appears to me that you are our advocate at the state level. Are you our advocate at the federal level too, or is that somebody else?
No, you have another advocate. That's Paul Schlesinger, who's also on the call.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. That's all.
Chaps, I think we've got, it's a good question, and we've got them both here. And if
I think
there's
I
no other,
saw Director Hawthorne had his hand up too.
okay, so Greg, go ahead. I don't see your hand raised. I'm sorry if I missed you, but go ahead.
Okay, there. My question is that you brought up hydrogen, Gus, and the problem with hydrogen, from what I've read, is the CO2 factor of producing the hydrogen is so great that it's not really a good fuel, that electric is by far better to use that than hydrogen. Hydrogen, we've been mistaken or been told that it's great for the environment, but to produce the hydrogen that creates the CO2 effect. So could you comment on that, or do you know anything about that?
I can't really comment on the science, but this is the direction that many legislators are looking into, and they're sort of intrigued by it. So, but yeah, that's something that I'm not sure is being considered, is the actual manufacturing of the hydrogen and sort of the ancillary negative impacts.
Right, and that's what we have to really pay attention to, because the hydrogen itself doesn't create any problems for the environment, but to produce it is a problem. So we should definitely check on that before we do it. Thank you.
Of course.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands. Christine, is now the time we want to turn to Paul Schlesinger and hear some
Yes, I think so. Thank you, Gus. And Paul, thank you for calling in from DC or close to it. And we look forward to your report on federal activities.
Thanks, Christina. Thanks, board. I'm a little jealous of Gus for his being in a position to do a year-end recap. I am really looking forward to when from Washington we can give our year-end recap. We're clearly not there yet. I'm guessing it won't be until the year's end that we're going to be able to do that. But there is forward motion. Just to give sort of a mini recap, you'll recall that the House passed its infrastructure bill a couple of months ago. And within that bill, which was a very progressive bill, and it contained a lot of things that we do have in our agenda, but perhaps most notably, it did have our $2 million earmark for the South of Salinas project. Unfortunately, as we'd reported on similar calls, the House infrastructure bill was kind of shoved aside, and everybody coalesced around the Senate infrastructure bill, which I think some people would think wasn't quite as progressive and forward-looking, but B, didn't contain any earmarks. And so our earmark from the House bill and everybody else's was pushed aside. The way that the House is addressing that to bring back our earmarks and others was they put $6 billion in the big so-called human infrastructure bill that's now the focus of so much attention. That was a $3.5 trillion bill. It's probably going to wind up somewhere, maybe half of that or a little better than half of that. Hard to say what happens out of all of that money to the $6 billion fund that everybody kind of unofficially recognized was going to fund the earmarks. Although one very encouraging note, Senator Cardin of Maryland, who's a senior guy on the Senate authorizing committees, reported just yesterday as having said that he thinks that that $6 billion fund is going to remain intact in the final reconciliation bill that is agreed upon quite possibly in the next couple of days. So we're looking good we are guardedly looking good and looking optimistic on how that earmark is going to play out. I would mention one very significant development, and Christina's looking concerned because we didn't discuss this yesterday, that came up just last week. The Senate unanimously passed a bill that would allow 30% of all the money that counties got through the ARPA program, the huge recovery bill from earlier this year. It would give counties enhanced flexibility to use up to 30% of that money on transportation infrastructure projects in the county. Monterey County got, I think, $84 million out of that bill. So about 25 million would become available at the county's determination and desire to use on a wide range of basically any transportation, federal transportation project, anything that's eligible for federal transportation dollars would be eligible for that 25 million. So for example, when Christina was running through the agenda earlier and saying that the Central Coast had only gotten, I think, one build/raise earmark through the, I'll say 10 years that program's been in existence, and it's a highly competitive program. We could use, if the county so determined, as much as $25 million on anything that's eligible under the RAISE program, which is pretty much anything. I will stop there. I have a sneaking hunch there's going to be at least one question raised, and would look forward to entertaining all questions that you might have.
Okay, so board members, do you have any questions? If you could raise your hand electronically here, it'd be helpful. Any questions for Paul? Well, Paul, I maybe you covered it all. Okay.
Thanks. You know, we work with Christina and Todd and the staff all the time. Anything comes up between meetings, let them know, let me know, and we'll, I'm sure, get right back to any of you all.
Well, we'll continue watching how the sausage is made in Washington, D.C.
You don't want to see that.
No. Christina, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes our report, and we ask for your support in circulating the draft program to committees.
Okay, great. At this time, we entertain a motion for passage of, we received the report, and now we want to move on the state and federal legislative and approve the draft 2022.
This is Allison Kerr, so moved.
Okay, I heard a voice before Allison.
Was Alejo?
Okay. So Allison, will you take the second on that?
I would be fine to take a second.
Okay, good. Thank you. Eloise, roll call, please.
District 1, Supervisor Alejo.
Aye.
District 2, Supervisor Phillips.
Aye.
District 3, Alternate Barba.
Aye.
District 4, Supervisor Askew.
Aye.
District 5, Supervisor Adams.
Aye.
City of Carmel by the Sea.
Aye.
City of Delray Oaks.
Aye.
City of Gonzales.
Aye.
City of Greenfield.
Aye.
City of King City.
Aye.
City of Marina.
Aye.
City of Monterey.
Aye.
City of Pacific Grove.
Aye.
City of Salinas.
Aye.
City of Sand City.
Aye.
City of Seaside.
Aye.
City of Soledad.
Aye.
Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much.
you.
Todd, you want to introduce item number 6 and our presenter?
Yes, thank you. Item number 6 is receiving a presentation on Monterey Salinas Transit's draft comprehensive operations analysis and network redesign. And we have Michelle Overmeyer from MST here to make a presentation.
Good morning, board members. Michelle Overmeyer, Director of Planning and Innovation with MST. Can everybody see the screen here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Many of you have already heard this similar presentation, so bear with me, but others have not, and it might be new to you. So I'm going to start out by giving you an overview of MST. This is a refresher for most people. We are the only public transit operator in Monterey County. We're a special district that was created by state law. Before the pandemic started, we operated about 56 fixed routes with a fleet of 162 vehicles. We had over 200 employees at the time. And then we also contract out service to MB Transportation. They operate the minibuses. The annual operating budget for MST is about $53 million, and we serve as the regional taxi authority. Before the pandemic, we provided transit service all the way up to San Jose, Santa Cruz, down to Templeton. Since the pandemic began, we had to scale that back, and we're not going quite as far. So this chart shows you here how our weekly ridership has changed. Before the pandemic, we were operating or serving over 60,000 passenger boardings per week, and that dropped off during the pandemic. It's slowly picking back up, and we're now close to 40,000 per week. And this chart here shows you how our monthly ridership has changed compared to the 3-year average before the pandemic. Again, we dropped off quite a bit in early 2020, and we're almost back to 50% of where we were before the pandemic. So MST received federal COVID relief funds, and we're using some of those funds to redesign our transit network, focusing specifically on fixed routes that are funded by general fund monies. We hired a nationally renowned consulting firm who has successfully helped other transit operators in the country build their ridership. So we're taking a very strategic approach at this, looking at our current levels. We did a robust public engagement process to get feedback from the community on what their values are. And then we designed a proposed new system for Monterey County. So we interviewed 80 community stakeholders. We held 9 paid focus groups with MST bus riders, and we did a survey of 500 households. This summarizes what the community values. And we can see that many people rated extremely important or very important that MST provides service to the elderly and disabled and to people who lack vehicles. Not rated as highly is for MST to provide special services, reducing traffic congestion related to tourist services. So this is something that we should be doing more regularly than we do. The last time we took a comprehensive look at our system was around the time that Fort Ord closed. Excuse me. And travel patterns and land use development has changed during that time. Monterey County development is really spread out, and MST has historically operated service that's a coverage-based system, which means that we operate to lots of places in the county, but not very frequently. So part of this network redesign is to answer the question of whether we should continue operating in that manner. So MST's board of directors gave policy direction on this redesign. 3 principles were decided as our direction for redesigning the network. One is to focus on serving areas where many people live and many people work, rather than providing a coverage-based system. Number 2 is to focus on low-income and minority communities that have limited transportation options. And then 3 is to rebalance the service so that Salinas urbanized area has a similar amount of transit service as the peninsula. We're not talking about the rides or the Measure Q taxi voucher programs with this. And we're also not talking about our special medical trips that go up to San Francisco and Palo Alto every month. This is just the fixed routes that use general fund money. So over the summer, we held 6 intense design workshops. Ours were virtual. This is not an actual picture of our workshops. Planners and engineers from each of the cities, as well as the county, were invited to participate in these staff level workshops. We designed 3 proposed networks. The low scenario assumes that either general fund resources recover very slowly from the pandemic, or there's an insufficient workforce to operate at full capacity, or both. A medium scenario matches MST's budget and workforce targets for the next fiscal year. And then a high scenario was designed, and this assumes that voters approve a new sales tax or another similarly sized source of funding appears. We're going to focus on the medium because that matches what we have in our budget. So the proposed network assumes that the bus comes every 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or every 60 minutes, so that we have well-timed transfers at our transfer stations for people that need to make a connecting bus. The proposed design includes more direct routes, shorter travel times, and service to high demand areas, so we can provide better transportation to jobs, education, and other opportunities. Some services that are not planned to be restored include service down to Big Sur, to Santa Cruz, and to San Jose, because it was determined that those don't meet the 3 main principles using general fund monies when compared to other needs in the county. For services that are not included in this proposal, MST is interested in hearing from potential community partners on funding those special services. And again, this does not touch the rides program or the Measure Q taxi voucher program. This chart is very helpful. I think it's very enlightening. This is what we're showing as the proposed time savings for door-to-door travel. The biggest improvements are going to be in South County. So King City residents are going to see about 80-minute travel time savings if they're trying to get to Northridge. Over in Soledad, that's another big time savings for these longer distance commutes. Other areas, the time saving isn't quite as much. And then in some cases, it's going to be about the same. So Salinas, the Alisal area going over to the Monterey Peninsula is going to be about the same as it is now. This is all included in our draft report that is on our website. So this shows what the schedule is like. We started the beginning of this year. We did the phase 1 community outreach in the spring, the design workshops in the summer. And right now we're in the phase 2 community outreach portion of this. We held several stakeholder meetings within the last 4 to 6 weeks. We did a public meeting in English and Spanish about 2 weeks ago. We're going to take all this information to our operations committee in December for final direction. And then we'll be finalizing the plan and presenting it to the MST Board of Directors in February. And then we'll begin implementing it. Hopefully, it'll be 100% implemented by the end of next year. This is the website for more information. You can also access the recorded videos from the public meetings a couple weeks ago, which go into a lot more depth than I did this morning. And then we have surveys that will be active until the end of this week in English and in Spanish. And that's my information there, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. I did want to turn to Doug Belize. I know you're the one that prepared this staff work, and you might have a comment to help support the presentation.
Yeah, this is Doug Bilsey, principal engineer. I think Michelle did a great job of the overview, and we at TAMC just fully support the need to look at this, and it's very timely, and I think it's a great, strong effort.
Great, thanks, Doug. Let's turn to the board members with comments or questions. Supervisor Adams.
Thank you. Thanks very much for the presentation. And I have heard it before, so it's no big surprise to me that a big part of my district won't get covered anymore, meaning that the routes to Big Sur. And I understand why. I totally understand why that you had to make appropriate decisions that would that base it on the bigger benefit rather than on ridership. I do want to thank you very much for working with the Big Sur Byway organization about the elimination of the service to Big Sur. That was very meaningful to them. It doesn't ameliorate the disappointment that the community has, though, in the workers not being able to take the bus to get to work down in Big Sur. And I'm hoping that you will continue to partner with the Big Sur community on creative ways to shuttle, or I think it's the shuttle opportunities that are called for in the transportation demand management plan. But we also need to look at other options like ride sharing vans for those workers who have relied on the bus to get to work. And as I said, I understand why you had to make that very difficult decision, but I'm still thinking of a lot of workers who are really kind of struggling to figure out how they're going to get to work now. So thanks very much.
Great, thank you. Bill Sabo, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it was a good presentation. I'm speaking on behalf of the airport here. I didn't see any reference to planning persons from the airport represented in the discussions about redesign of the system. And I didn't see the airport as a destination here. What will be the impact of the redesign on access to the airport and the speed of access from places like Salinas and Marina elsewhere? Can you help me with that?
Yes, so we're still going to provide the same level of service that we do now, which is, well, maybe a little bit better. It's proposed for hourly service. So basically along the same route that we're currently operating.
Okay, well, I emphasize, I'm obviously a biased proponent of the airport here, but we are still a transportation node, and many of the people that would like to access the airport would like to do so via some alternative other than car rentals or driving to the airport and parking there. So it should be a consideration, and I don't know exactly what invitation has been extended to our planning staff. We have a staff. We're kind of like a city, and so I hope that they are included in your discussions. But thank you very much for the work you've done on behalf of all of us for the speeding up the system. Thank you.
The chaps, Fedori, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the presentation, Michelle. Really appreciate it. I did take a look at the executive summary too. Really fantastic job. I had a couple of questions. One is, you mentioned that this exercise has been undertaken after quite some time. When do you expect the next, and is there an iteration every 5 years is when you'll update this? How do you measure that?
Yeah, the planning horizon for this is 5 to 10 years. So we're hoping to do it again within about 5 years.
Oh, okay. And then just from my understanding, Supervisor Askew had also raised this point earlier in one of the items. Arena numbers are going to be out. Hopefully we'll have some kind of direction on where water is going in the next 2 to 3 years. Will these items factor in as these are fluid items. Is the intent to look into any new developments as things go to redesign? Or are you really structured for that 5 to 10 kind of window to make changes?
If there are major developments going in, we would want to work with the developers to serve those areas. If there are places that we're not serving right now. One of the good things about this proposed plan is that we're looking at 15-minute transit service in several areas of the county. So on the peninsula from along Lighthouse in Fremont, in Salinas, East Alisal, and then North Main Street. With the 15-minute transit frequency, that puts cities in a really good position to be competitive for state grants for housing to have better access to that. So I think that's a big benefit of this proposal.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I'm not seeing any hands. Thank you very much, Michelle. We appreciate your presentation and report, and Doug and your work as well. And we look forward to seeing this as it moves forward to its final phases.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 7, next up. Todd, you want to introduce your staff member?
Thank you. So Mike Zeller, our new Director of Programming and Project Delivery, is going to be presenting on our programming proposal for the 2022 Regional Transportation Improvement Program. Go ahead, Mike.
Great, thank you, Todd. Good morning, Chair, members of the board. I'm Mike Zeller. Just bring up my screen here. I have some slides to share. So today I'll be presenting on our 2022 Regional Transportation Improvement Program. So this is a funding proposal that comes to the agency that we program every 2 years towards regionally significant transportation projects. So things like our Highway 68, Highway 156, US 101. So I'll go through each of the projects that we have in our program to give an update on the funding. But this is funding that comes to the agency from state and federal gas tax. And as I mentioned, we receive a new share of funding every 2 years that we program in a 5-year funding cycle that then gets updated in another 2 years, and we add 2 years on to the end of the next 5-year cycle. So this 5-year cycle runs from fiscal year 22-23 to 26-27. All of the projects that we propose for funding are required to be approved by the California Transportation Commission. So the Regional Transportation Improvement Program document that we submit is ultimately reviewed and approved by the commission, and then anytime that we need to come in for a request for an allocation or an amendment to the program or time extension, that all runs through, well, first through Caltrans for review and then ultimately to the commission for their approval. So the first project that we have for review is the Scenic State Route 68 project. So we did go through this funding proposal earlier in the month with the executive committee. So I'll point out a few changes to the projects that happened since that executive committee presentation, if you recall the discussion at that meeting. For the Scenic State Route 68, so this project is between Salinas and Monterey, proposed to be a corridor of 9 roundabout improvements, as well as wildlife corridor improvements to help with wildlife crossings. This project is already programmed in our state transportation improvement program for the environmental phase. We also added some federal highway infrastructure program funds, as well as using a small amount of Measure X for design peer review. Caltrans, during this process, as we've been refining the proposal for the roundabouts in the corridor, have identified that a need for some additional analysis on the proposal. So they're updated their cost estimate for both environmental and design phases. The environmental phase is needing about an additional $4.8 million. So we are proposing to cover that amount with a portion of our new STIP funds, so $2.1 million. As well as some unprogrammed highway infrastructure program funds that we have available to us, as well as our Senate Bill 1 local partnership program formula funds at $1.9 million. So again, these are the local partnership program funds are ones that come through Senate Bill 1 that we're eligible for because of Measure X. So formula funds that we have flexibility to program to projects at our discretion. If you recall from the executive committee presentation, we did have an additional $4.8 million programmed in 25-26 for construction. This was just kind of a placeholder funds that we had some additional STIF funds left over that we're proposing to just park in 25-26 to use as a potential match for a future grant for construction of a segment 1 of this project. With the revised cost estimates that we received from Caltrans, the design phase costs did go up. So we took that $4.8 million that was just parked and moved it back into the design to fully fund that phase in 23-24. So that would bring the total amount for design at just about $23.5 million. Looking out at right away in construction after design is completed. This would give us an opportunity to come back with our next RTIP proposal in another 2 years and potentially look at adding additional funds at that time. But moving the funds into design now just means that the project is, that phase is fully funded and we can keep the project moving forward towards construction and get it to a place where it's competitive for future grant cycles. The next project is the US 101 south of Salinas project. So this is currently in environmental, or starting environmental. We're pre-environmental right now, doing public outreach on the project. This is looking at frontage roads down either side of US 101, as well as some interchange improvements. The environmental currently has 8.6 million of state transportation improvement program funds programmed to it. The total amount for environmental, the estimate that we've had has always been about $10 million. So with this new round of STIP funds, we're proposing to add an additional about 1.4 million to make sure that the environmental is fully funded and can move forward. This should be able to, the environmental phase should be able to get underway in the next fiscal year in 22-23. For the State Route 156 Castroville Boulevard project, so this is the interchange improvements at Castroville Boulevard and 156. So this series of 3 roundabouts, as well as bike and pedestrian improvements to connect to the Castroville bike and pedestrian path, as well as providing local circulation improvements. There's no changes proposed to the programming to this, but just identifying that we're carrying over the existing STIP funding that the board has already approved for this project, and that the design phase is currently underway. These STIP dollars in construction have not been allocated yet. We also have the $20 million from the Trade Corridors grant that we received on this project. So excited to be able to have construction funded and be able to get this project underway. And then another project that is already currently programmed and not proposing any changes to is the Salinas rail extension, so packages 2 and 3. Package 2 is the layover facility improvements in Salinas. Package 3 is the Gilroy Station and track improvements. This project already has $12.5 million of state transportation improvement program dollars programmed to the package 2, and then also has traffic congestion relief program, as well as a Senate Bill 1 transit intercity rail capital program grant that was received to fully fund the constructions for packages 2 and 3. And then finally, the last proposal that we have for our STIP dollars this cycle is to update our planning, programming, and monitoring. So this is a portion of our STIP share that we're able to put towards staff time to plan, program, and monitor our STIP program. So what we are proposing to do is to add additional funds in fiscal years 22, 23, 23, 24, and 24, 25 to bring that up to $240,000, and then also have 25, 26, and 26, 27 at 240 and 239. So this is a way to just kind of balance out the funding that we have, and it makes the budgeting going forward for the staff time a little bit more straightforward to have the funds balanced out like this. So the timeline for moving forward, having the discussion with the board at this meeting today, and then we'll bring back a final proposal at our December 1st board meeting with the Regional Transportation Improvement Program. The full document we'll have for the board review and approval. That document is then required to be submitted to the California Transportation Commission by December 15th for inclusion in the 2022 State Transportation Improvement Program. So there will be hearings at the beginning of 2022 for the 2022 program. And then that is ultimately adopted in March of next year. But the key dates is for us to be able to submit our program by December 15th. And that concludes my report. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, great. Let me get back here to my screen and see if we have any questions. Mike, board members, any questions of Mike? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. Todd, any additional information to add?
No, I think Mike did a good job covering our proposal. Thank you.
Okay, great. Next item up is received reports from transportation providers. Let me go to the current screen. Bear with me here while I get myself oriented back. First up was a call for Caltrans Director's Report.
Great. Thank you, Chair, board members. Tim Gubbins, Caltrans District 5 Director. Just some brief comments and then some breaking news that's coming across my desk. For the brief comments, in California now has our Clean California program, looking at removing litter and doing different beautification efforts. I think we've talked about it at this board in the past, but one of the newer things that's happening is looking at stipends for people who do adopt a highway. We are trying it out in a few counties of the state right now, and are looking very soon to roll it out statewide. So as people adopt highways, they would get up to $250 a month. Not a lot for all that time that would be required, but at least something to acknowledge the effort that it's going to be. Also, October is National Pedestrian Safety Month. So just a reminder out there, be very careful when you're going through areas that you're sharing with bicycles and peds. Caltrans is looking at this month. We've done intentional efforts on signal timing enhancement, extending pedestrian crossing times. We've taken this month to kind of look at what we can do for safety, new signs and markings, high visibility crosswalks where we can. Lastly, I just wanted to say, like most of your public works departments, Caltrans has been very busy trying to do winter prep. This storm came a little earlier Sunday night into Monday than we were expecting, but we've been out there cleaning culverts and cleaning up the debris where we can. However, last night and early this morning, we did have a slide on Highway 1. So down in the southern part of this county, and actually the very northern part of San Luis Obispo, Ragged Point had a slide this morning. Roadway is blocked, so we have just closed it this morning. I have my maintenance crews on site, and the roadway looks like it didn't take much damage, so it'll be closed as they clean that up. However, I also have engineers on site exploring the slope up above. So we have some large perched material, if you will, up above. So we need to make sure as we're opening the roadway that will not be coming down. So I have crews coming out there with equipment to handle that as well. That will be started today. And until they get up there and start doing that efforts, I cannot give you a firm opening our communication up just as well as we can. So that is my report for today. I'll be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you very much, Tim. Looks like we have a question. Mayor Craig.
Thanks so much, Tim, for bringing up your Clean California initiative. I know there's $296 million, I think, set aside for it. Is this a multi-year program? Is it $296 million per year? Is it $296 million over 10 years?
Yeah.
Is this a one-year pilot program? And I need details on that, please.
Certainly, and I will be happy to send details to staff to distribute to the board if you don't have it already, so all your agencies can have it. There are many facets of Clean California. It is a 3-year program. And so some of the enhanced money that we are receiving as Caltrans to do our cleanup will happen over 3 years. Some of the money that, the pot of money you referenced is over the next 2 years. And cities and counties and other agencies can apply for that. It's a competitive. The applications will be due, I believe, in December. There have been 2 workshops. A third one is coming up to talk about what type of projects and how to do that application. I will make sure to get that information through Executive Director Muck and his staff so that it can be distributed readily. I just love saying that phrase too. And so we will get that out to you. It is a 2-year program, but that is the total money in those 2 years.
And through the chair, if I may, a secondary question. So how much does Caltrans have set aside for cleaning up highways on their own? Your property?
Yes, it is also a couple $100 million of enhanced effort for the next year. And when we looked at what we did in 2020, even before we got this year, the amount of litter that we picked up could fill the Rose Bowl. And so with all of our highways, there is quite a bit out there. And so we are looking at doubling and tripling that amount that we're going to do.
I was going to say in Salinas, you could fill the Rabobank Stadium with the amount. So I think that there's probably a good opportunity here to really focus in Monterey County on particularly 101, but certainly other areas that Caltrans manages. And so and maybe perhaps you and I can have a separate conversation. I don't mean to hijack the TAMC meeting with this, but as I'm working to try to get, our city cleaned up, obviously 101 runs through it. The highway is a major point of contention with quite a bit of cleanup. I know Caltrans has worked well, but we need to put a consistent cleaning schedule in place. And I worry that throwing money at it for 2 years doesn't really solve the problem. So I just want to make sure that you and I have a good conversation about that.
I agree, and I look forward to that conversation. And if I could take the opportunity to also address that, that's what we want to do. That's why we want to work with communities to make sure that, we have sustainability and resiliency in these efforts that we're doing. And in addition to the Clean California efforts that I mentioned, another area that we're looking at is how can we help the communities that have been underserved, that aren't being able to be served now. And to do that, we also want to bring people back to work as we can. And so we've instituted a new classification slightly under our maintenance worker, and we're calling it a low barrier. It's a service assistant maintenance. So in our district, we have a 5-county district here. We're going to have 2 full-time crews of just this new classification. So it can help people enter the workforce that might not otherwise, and then work their way up through the maintenance chain. And they will be concentrated just on litter. One of those 2 crews from a district will be based out of Salinas to handle the northern part of the district. So I'd love to give you more details, but it's a multifaceted program, and we're really excited about it. So thanks for the opportunity to expand on my talk.
No problem. Looking forward to talking about it further. Thank you.
Supervisor Adams.
Yes, thank you. Thanks so much, Tim. It's great to see you again. And I very much appreciate your update, although I don't appreciate hearing that Highway 1 is going to be closed again. And I'm just wondering if you could give me a little more information about the Ragged Point slide. Is that in the big new spot that we had just done after the 2017 mess?
It is not. It is south of that. It is south of
Okay.
that. And so it's actually it's actually just barely into San Luis County. And so it is up there. And there was maybe 30 yards of material. So it's large boulders we can do. However, when we looked at the slopes, my maintenance workers asked some of the engineers to come out to see what we can do up above. We do not want to reopen it with material ready to come down. So we will be working on that. We have crews and equipment on the way today to take care of that.
So maybe it'll be 3 days, perhaps open by the weekend.
As I said, until the crews get up there, yes, I would appreciate if we can do that. I know what the community values for this lifeline. I feel in an awkward place until I have more information. I don't want to give commitments until I know what it is.
Absolutely. And I know you weren't the one up there pushing the rocks down, so no problem. Thanks so much. And I'm sure our guys at Public Works are made aware of this by now. Good. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, good to see you.
Thank you.
Tim, I don't see any other questions or comments, but I want to just say thank you very much from the city of Monterey. I know that we have been sending quite a few letters and we've been asking for help, and you've been very responsive. And we have seen some significant action on Highway 1 and 218 and 68 on the cleanups. And we encourage the progress to continue. I know you have only so many resources, but also want to look for opportunities where we know that we have to go back frequently at a certain spot where there's opportunities to harden it, to put fence lines and barriers to keep from having to clean up the same places over and over. So look forward to continuing that work. And thank you very much for all the work that your crew and you have been doing.
Thank you.
Let's move forward to our next partner, Bill Sabo. What do you have for us from the airport?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we always appreciate the opportunity to do a little promotion for the airport here. We're at the airport, we're really sitting on pins and needles about the Transportation Infrastructure Act that's sitting in Congress right now. It has a significant component in it for airports, and we are looking to that program to help us with our efforts to try to improve the terminal area and the boarding areas at the airport. It's vital to us, and so we're hopeful, along with several other airports around the country, that infrastructure bill provides for that. The FAA is very supportive, but they're subject to the whims of Congress. We are very pleased also that we are probably like 90 to 95% of pre-COVID passenger boardings. And I want to emphasize that it's our sense that these are boardings from not necessarily just tourism, but rather origination by local residents, both from Salinas, the Salinas Valley, and also the Monterey Peninsula. That is a goal that we've always had, is to improve more access by our local citizens, and that is happening. And it's partly due to the fact that we have more destinations, and we're getting a lot of interest from more carriers, and more seats means more opportunities for our residents. So and American is now up to 6 departures a day, 3 to Dallas and 3 to Phoenix. That allows access to the Midwest and the East Coast very, very easily out of Monterey. So I think all of your constituents should know about all that, as Highway 101 is going to be undergoing more construction. That will make the time to San Jose an even longer agony than it has been in the past. Alaska is adding a second flight to San Diego, and also they're planning a second flight to Seattle, and that will be probably in the spring or summer out there. And unfortunately, Allegiant, who was flying to Portland out of here, isn't getting the boardings that they want. We attributed to their rather poor marketing of the fact that they were flying to Portland. So we're very pleased with what the carriers are doing, and we've had a lot of interest from some low-cost carriers. And they are, there's a new startup out of Reno that's providing service to California cities in through California and through Reno. So they're talking to us, and we're hopeful that we can get that opportunity. For the upcoming holidays, we're planning on having a USO facility for military personnel coming and going through Thanksgiving and Christmas. We've done that before, and it's always been very well received. And so we see that it's going to be things are on the upswing for us. And I wanted to note in the reference to the charging stations, with the assistance of the Air Resources Board, we now have 6 charging stations at the airport. And we would like to have more opportunities for that in the future. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Bill. Next up from Monterey Salinas Transit, I don't see Carl, but Michelle, is it going to be for you tonight or for today?
Yeah, I can give a quick update.
Okay.
So the California Association of Coordinated Transportation, or CALACT, is having a conference here in Monterey this week. CALACT represents the small transit operators in the state, and MST is the hosting agency for this conference. So that's where Carl is today. We're excited to be doing these conferences again. This is the first one that staff is going to in person. MST continues to provide free bus passes to any passenger that shows proof of COVID vaccination. Last I heard, we had distributed about 450 passes, but the requests are tapering off for that. Earlier this month, we had our ribbon cutting for the King City Operations and Maintenance Facility. We're staffing up, and we are looking at beginning operations out of that bus yard by the end of this year. And then, like any other transit operator in the country, we are struggling with our staffing levels. We're hiring bus drivers, so please spread the word. Thank you.
Well, I've been seeing your commercials, so you're getting the word out. Next up would be Monterey Bay Area Resources District. I don't see Rich, and is there anyone here that's going to be covering for Rich Stedman?
Hi, Chair. This is Dave Frisbee. I'm the Planning and Air Monitoring Manager with the Monterey Bay Air Resources District. And I want to just go over a few things that we're up to these days. The most recent one is the electric bicycle incentive program, which opened up on September 28th. Our board directed us to open this program. We're excited about it. It took a while to get it together to figure out how to approach it, but I think we've got a good approach now. It's we're offering $1,000 for an incentive to purchase a electric bicycle between $1,000 and $4,000 in price to low-income applicants. And that would be a class 1, 2, or 3 bicycle. And we've got $50,000 set aside for this program. It's all done online. It's an online application program. Of course, we'd help people if they need the assistance and they can't get online to apply. But so far, we've had a lot of interest and a couple of applications. So we're going to be doing more promotion, try to get the word out about that program. We also have our Monterey Bay Electric Vehicle Incentive Program, which we're running now for our 5th year. It provides residents with an incentive to purchase a new or used electric or plug-in electric vehicle. Have $400,000 set aside for that. So far, we've spent about obligated about $75,000 on that. So we're making progress, and there's a lot of interest in that program. It's been a very popular program for the last several years. We have our AB 2766 program, which we take $4 off of each of the registered vehicles in the region, and we use that to provide grants for reduction in emissions, so emission reduction programs. This year in Monterey County, we've got Monterey Salinas Transit will be receiving all electric transit bus. And Monterey City Disposal Service will be receiving a grant for an all-electric Class 8 refuse truck. I believe that's the first one that will be in Monterey County. We also have 2 electric buses planned on being delivered to North Monterey County Unified School District, and another to Monterey Peninsula Unified School District through the Zero Emission School Bus Program. We've got funding. We received funding from East Garrison offsite mitigation fees, as well as our Assembly Bill 923 funds and funding from Central Coast Community Energy. Those buses have been held up for quite a while due to the manufacturing slowdowns from the pandemic. Our plug-in Monterey Bay electric vehicle infrastructure program is continuing. Thanks, Bill Sabo, for the shout out on the chargers that were funded through that program at the airport. We've got many other projects around the 3 counties. We've got one going to break ground fairly soon in the Soledad shopping center off of Highway 1. It's a DC fast charge station. There's 4 dispensers going in there. We focused on, with that program, corridor, multi-unit developments, and destination and workplace sites as part of our overall plan for where we install these electric vehicle infrastructure. And so far along the corridor, we've installed DC fast charging at King City, Camp Roberts at the rest areas. Soledad is coming up, and we have a fast charge 200 kilowatt per hour station at Soledad. Also recently put one at the Target in Marina. So that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, David. We appreciate your work on those charging stations, because I think that we all in all our communities need more. Next up is item number 9, reports on meetings attended by board members, transportation agency expenses. Any meetings attended? Now it's time to declare that. Okay, I don't think there's any meetings that have taken place. Item number 10, Executive Director's report. Todd?
Thank you. First off, I want to express my appreciation to the board for approving the budget action that was required to make a modification to our organization chart, which allows me to promote Christina Watson to our Director of Planning and Mike Zeller as Director of Programming and Project Delivery. I'm very excited that we're able to handle it this way. They're both very capable people, and look forward to and have been giving them the opportunity to grow in their professional capacity. So thank you for that support. I also wanted to welcome a new planner. We have Alyssa Gunter that started on Monday, and she's a recent graduate from UC Santa Cruz with a degree in environmental studies. Alyssa, could you maybe turn your camera on and say something and wave so people can see you?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Todd. I'm very excited to be part of the team and work on all the exciting projects that TAMC has to offer. So thank you.
Thank you. So excited to have some new staff coming on board, and we'll have another person that I'll be able to introduce at our December meeting. Then I also wanted to remind the board that our next meeting is a special AB 361 meeting on November 17th at 8:30. We do not have a regular November board meeting, but our December meeting is early as our regular schedule has it, and it's on December 1st starting at 9. And then because of the 30-day requirement from AB 361, we'll have to have a second special meeting in December which is scheduled on the 15th. So just wanted to remind everyone of that, and we'll help keep those on, get them on schedule so that we can keep quorums going and allow us to continue to have virtual meetings as long as this pandemic is facing us. I also wanted to mention that in the consent agenda was the nomination form for our annual Excellence Awards. So if you could be thinking of individuals who have shown excellence in excelling and supporting transportation projects, or jurisdictions to recognize for their specific projects, please consider filling out an application and submitting. December 3rd, I believe, is the deadline for that. And then finally, I wanted to end with sharing with a picture. Make sure you can see this. This is a picture of the demolition that's going on right now out on TAMC's four-door properties in Marina. We inherited seven buildings on the former four-door, World War II vintage or recently after, so from the 40s and 50s. And in coordination with Monterey Transit, we're working on demolition right now. And this picture is actually from last week, so it's probably even farther along. So I just wanted to share that picture because it's really exciting, and that the buildings are coming down. With that, I'm concluding my report.
Okay, great. Thank you, Todd. I think there's a couple of hands raised and comments. So I think you've spurred some exciting news. So let's call on Christina Dirksen. Christina. Christina, can you hear me? Okay, let's move past. We'll come back to Christina.
Hi, all. I'm having a little internet problem. Can you hear me okay? Just do that.
We got you now. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I want to say thank you for that really detailed report. And Todd, we're on the same line length because this morning I was wanting to take a picture of the demolition. So thank you for that. The crews are on site, have been in sight. You can peek through it through the trees. And I just wondered if you can just talk about how's the remediation of that happening in terms of, was there any like asbestos in there, and that lot with the rocks, if you happen to know where it went to. I just want to say thank you very, very much. Just again, peeking through the trees, there's progress, and I look very much forward to, as we all do, is the removal of the blight. It's going to give a better entrance to the peninsula for people on the road looking over. We just have to get the trees cut. Where's that Caltrans guy? I just want to say thank you very, very, very much to everyone who had a part in bringing these buildings down. So if you can just answer the question about the remediation, was there any asbestos or any environmental concerns, and what happened to the rocks, if you know?
Yes, there was extensive testing in advance of putting this project out to bid, where they identified both asbestos and lead, which is consistent with pretty much any building built in the 40s and 50s. And so part of the bid package included criteria or guidance that required treating those as required per state and federal law. So both the asbestos and lead were removed from the building before the rest of the building was demolished. And then depending on the class of the hazard, they were either taken off to, I believe it's Kettleman City, where they have a hazardous waste landfill facility, or otherwise as appropriate. So definitely we're treated as required by law and done in advance of the rest of the buildings being demolished. As far as the rocks, I'm not quite sure what you're referring to. There is just south of our project site a concrete recycling plant. What they do in the demolition of our buildings is they basically demolish them, they sort the material, and then they go through the process of hauling away things. So there might have been a pile of rocks or concrete that was temporarily being stored as they're going through the demolition process.
Okay, great. Thanks, Todd. Supervisor Askew.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to TAMC board for prioritizing this blight removal in
Can you
Marina.
just give me a quick council when will this?
It's I drive past it every day, ride my bike past. I've been monitoring it all. It's phenomenal. I'm so I'm just personally grateful that this is finally happening, and look forward to seeing it all gone and getting that last. I also want to just one more time say thank you to TMZ for getting those fences removed along Del Monte Avenue that were adjacent to the train tracks. They've just been sort of leftover blight that was forgotten about. So we're going to get that last little bit of fencing down and have a big celebration. And I hope that everyone from the TMZ board can share in the long anticipated excitement of our community for getting this blight taken down. So thank you, Todd. Thank you, everyone, for your support.
Okay, and I missed some comments there. I don't see a hand, but was there another comment on Todd's report?
Greg Hawthorne had his hand up.
Okay, Greg, go ahead.
Yes, my question, I think you've answered part of it anyway. It was what are you going to do now that after the cleanup? Is there anything that you're going to do in those locations, for after you've cleaned up the buildings and so forth? Do you have any plans on what you're going to do with that space other than clean it up?
So cleanup and blight removal obviously was a high priority. TAMC was given the property over 10 acres there along Highway 1 and 8th Street as a site for future transit-oriented development. Right now, there's not water available for that site, so we're really in a holding pattern until there's water available and the city of Marina is ready to move forward. We have been working in coordination with Monterey Salinas Transit. Part of this demolition and just south of TAMC's property is a building that Monterey Salinas Transit owns, and that's going to be the site for the 5th Street Transit Exchange that's part of the SURF project. So we're working very closely with them and looking forward for our site to be developed to further support transit service along the corridor.
Great, thank you.
All right, let's see. I'm just looking to see if we have any additional questions. Not seeing anything. Okay, great. Thank you very much for everybody. Good reasons to celebrate progress. Next item up is announcements and/or comments from transportation agency members on matters they wish to see on a future agenda. Mayor LaBarre.
I just wanted to comment, Supervisor Alejo talked about the demonstration project in Watsonville and Santa Cruz. I was able to participate with that also, and that was very, very interesting. So maybe in the future, as Director Alejo mentioned about the possibility of demonstrations, we should have a conversation on what kind of demonstrations you think would be appropriate in an area, and maybe identifying areas where where there is actually infrastructure where demonstration projects could be had. And that would be my only comment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I think there's always opportunities where if it's not a demonstration, site inspections are always exciting. And as we are coming back together in different modified forms, it's always good to actually go to the field and see what's happening. Good comment. Chaps Patori, you're next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just had a suggestion. Today's discussion, I heard a lot about charging stations and chargers, etc. Just a suggestion, if possible, just like we have a bike map for TAMC, perhaps a charging station map for the county or the region essentially would probably help too, because that's one of the things that will probably promote interest for bikes and everything else. Thank you.
That's a good point. And I would ask Todd if that is something we could research. There's probably already a map somewhere in the world that's been done by some of the providers. I do know that just as we're on the topic of comments and charging stations, the city of Monterey is moving ahead with some negotiations with a provider for additional 20 chargers in one of our garages. So we're constantly seeing opportunities, but if there's a map that's already done that could be a resource, maybe it's time to consider putting that up on the website as well.
We can definitely, there are public resources or commercial products that show charging, but we will be working on some planning efforts this upcoming year, talking about specific charging needs for commercial freight and other users. And I think we'll be talking about charging locations for those types of uses, and we can certainly incorporate just public facilities as well, just as part of that discussion, and share it with the board when we make presentations.
Yeah, very good. Colleen, I see your hands raised.
Thank you. I'm the alternate for Supervisor Mary Adams. She had to step away, and I just wanted to give a shout out to Supervisor Alejo because he introduced an electric vehicle charging station referral through the Monterey County Board of Supervisors. And so I think this just came up and it is being worked on, and the Monterey County Sustainability Program Manager, who is Ashley Paulsworth, is working on it as well. So a shout out to them both.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we have, next up is going to be the closed session. Let me turn this over to Kathleen. Any comments you have for item number 12 as we prepare to move over to closed session?
Nothing, no.
Okay, so I want to turn this over to, I think, Mike Zeller, as we're going to all stand by. We're going to take a break and move to closed session. We will reconvene after closed session. So board members, please stand by. And for now, we'll move to closed session.
All right, Chair Smith, I think we're back.
Okay, looks good. Catherine, if you'll just verify that we still have a quorum and give you a chance.
Yes, we do still have a quorum. Would you like our clerk to call roll again?
Eloise, why don't you do that? We want to make sure we're official. Eloise, would you call the roll for the reconvene of this TAMC meeting?
District 1, Supervisor Alejo. District 2, Supervisor Phillips. District 3, Supervisor Lopez.
Here.
District 5, I'm sorry, District 4, Supervisor Askew.
Yuri Anderson for Supervisor Askew.
District 5, Supervisor Adams.
Alternate Courtney here.
City of Carmel by the Sea.
Here.
City of Delray Oaks,
Here.
City of Gonzales,
Here.
City of Greenfield,
Here.
City of King City,
Present.
City of Marina,
Here.
City of Monterey,
Here.
City of Pacific Grove,
Here.
City of Salinas,
Here.
City of Sand City,
Here.
City of Seaside,
Here.
City of Soledad.
Here.
Chair, we do have a quorum.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Eloise. Catherine, would you make our announcement from our closed session, please?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 D1, the TAMC Board of Directors met in closed session regarding existing litigation. The board provided authority to move forward with arbitration regarding 356 West Market Street, and no other reportable action was taken. That concludes my report.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And with that, I think our business is done today. Todd, anything else?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. This meeting will be adjourned. Thank you all, board, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you. Thank you.